Very likely.
Anyway, go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Anyways, Gene, on this book, it goes into very great detail about life and the Enterprise and the fleet. And I wondered if your writers and script writers are following it. Because, for example, it doesn't go into detail about a sister ship called the Yamato, you introduced in a recent episode, but it doesn't mention it in the guide at all. And there's some contradictions between what the guide says and what the script writing does. So if you can get a copy of this fleet manual, it would be very helpful to us.
Well, if there comes to have to become a decision between the guide and what I tell my writers to do, what I tell my writers to do,
it's kind of like a writer's guide that's really in-depth, but...
Well, the reason for the Yamato is I've always been fond of Japan, and the Yamato was, of course, the largest battleship that was ever built.
Mm-hmm.
It never won any victories, but there's a certain sadness, a proud sadness in them having built that,
right,
and had it go to the bottom of the ocean.
With respect, I get the feeling that maybe the fans might be a little bit ahead of you in terms of dictionaries and books and stuff that's available, because it comes out so fast and so quickly that maybe even Gene Roddenberry can't keep up with all of it.
I wish I could say that I'd seen them all and sort of coordinated it all so it would all be the same, but the fact is that to the problems of producing a television show or of executive producing one is just 13 hours a day. And I grab a little reading of those things when I can.
Sure.
But unless you invent a 20-day week, there's no way I can do it.
I don't know if you saw this series that ran on ABC, the Herman Wouk book, War and Remembrance. Did you watch any of that?
Oh, yes. A friend of mine, Dan Curtis.
Yeah, Dan was in one night. I thought it was a terrific television show. I don't think we're ever going to see anything of that scope on television again.
It is. I'm glad we have that show
too,
because it's a bit of history that he's done there.
Not a bit of history. I thought to myself watching it that in our lifetimes, my friend, we are never going to see players on the world stage like played in that motion picture.
No, you're right.
Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin and Hitler and Mussolini and and Tojo. I mean, we're never going to see that again. It was great theater.
And we were lucky to have a talent like Dan doing. As a matter of fact, coincidentally, I just saw him an hour ago.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a good man. As a man who flew in World War II, as you watched that thing unfold, did it come rushing back for you? You know, you were one of our flyboys in World War II. Yeah.
Some did, but that was so long ago, and I've led a couple of different lives since then.
I understand.
And I look up on it now as sort of fiction. I know I sat there on Guadalcanal, took off from B-17s, but as I look back, it was a boy that I knew and was reasonably fond of that did that, but I don't relate to it that closely anymore.
Yeah. A boy named Gene Roddenberry did that. Yeah, he flew in the war.
Not a bad kid.
No.
Had a lot to learn.
Hey, helped defend America and democracy and save the world.
We Americans did some marvelous things during that war. Although I think I'm just sad that we fought Japan. I think we should have fought. We had to fight Germany. There was a great deal of evil there. But Japan was trying to elbow her place into the sun, like as we did 50 years earlier.
Yeah, but we didn't. You know, Pearl Harbor was a tough one. That was that was an act of great aggression against this country. I mean,
yes, it was.
In that time, you know, they.
But that's the nature of war, too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But they blindsided us, Gene. They really did.
Yes. And
it was a tough time. You know, I watched that thing, and I wasn't in the war. I was too young. But I remember as a kid, I remember VJ Day. I remember VE Day as a kid out in the Midwest, and it was a time of great celebration. And I remember you couldn't have meat, you couldn't have coffee, you couldn't buy things in metal. You know, my dad went to work he worked all week in his job, and then on the weekend he would go down to some defense plant and work a 6th and 7th day, you know, as part of the war effort, because they needed every able-bodied guy who wasn't in the war, who was too old to go, to work building things to send to the war effort.
But a strange thing's happened to you in making a show like Star Trek. You begin to look upon these things from a broader perspective.
Okay.
As here is a planet on which this war happened. You tend to forget that, okay, I was in America fighting for America. You look at all of the people. You understand also the nice things about Japan.
Of course.
And you take a philosophical look to all
I
of
think
these
what you
battles.
get is you begin to realize that it's not the people of Japan that waged war on us. It was the military leadership that waged war on us, not the people of Japan. They didn't want that. They didn't want to send their sons to become kamikaze pilots. I'm sure they didn't.
And there was a couple of systems that were clashing at that time, too. Japan had... she felt that she had a right to be dominant in her sphere of the Pacific. And so those things are... It's easy to get angry about it, and there were times I did.
Sure.
But looking back on it from a perspective of science fiction, you tend to look upon whole countries, whole globes, whole people.
I understand that. I understand that. But I still feel, you know, having watched that picture and remembering that time when I was a kid, it was a time of great theater in the world with great players on the stage. And I agree, Hitler was an evil that had to be taken care of. But I think in the Pacific, Japan, I think that the war and the loss of the war helped define for Japan what its influence was going to be in its sphere of the world.
As a matter of fact, she turned out with greater influence.
Right, and as a matter of fact, I wish that she would now begin paying us for the defense that we afford her. We will continue with Gene Roddenberry, and as many of you as time permits. We're running short here on the Wednesday night radio show. We'll be right back after these messages. We're back with Gene Roddenberry, and here's Mike in Sioux City, Iowa. Hi, Mike. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Gene.
Hi, Mike.
I have two questions, one of which is exactly how much authority do you have on the Star Trek films?
They don't call him General Roddenberry for nothing.
No. The fact is that I carefully do not allow myself too much on them because I'm not producing them. And when I was a producer of film, I would have hated for anyone else to come in and have the final word. So I keep myself to executive consultant.
Okay.
One thing I do insist, they make it Star Trek per the format we did, but otherwise I'm not going to tell them how to produce.
But you don't want Star Trek to be something that ain't Star Trek.
That's right. I don't want that.
Okay.
I don't want them to come in and shoot and beat up aliens because they look different.
I got you. Okay. What else, Mike?
And exactly how do you approve of the direction the films have taken? Do you approve of the way they've went?
I think they've gotten steadily better. I think Star Trek IV was a fine film.
Yes, it was.
Yes,
terrific
movie. It was
movie.
one of my favorites.
With humor and everything.
Yep.
And our people came out strongly in that.
Yeah, and because I'm a fan of The Next Generation as well, but still, the creation of Captain James T. Kirk is one of the best.
Well, it was sort of scary to go to The Next Generation with someone else. Many fans wrote, if you lose Kirk and Spock, you've lost me. And that was scary to test them.
Tom in Salt Lake City, Utah. Hello, Tom. You're on the air.
Good evening, Jane. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm wondering, do you remember how you formulated your philosophy of infinite diversion through infinite combinations?
Infinite diversity through infinite combination?
Yes.
I was trying to think up a philosophy for the Vulcans, and it fits a feeling I've always had that the most wonderful thing we have is diversity. To have someone say to you, I don't agree with you because, that is the beginning of knowledge. That's the beginning of excitement. In food and everything, diversity is the thing. We will learn, one day we will learn to appreciate diversity and really worship it.
You know, it's interesting where you hear things from. I was golfing one day back east at a course there, and there was a young man who was caddying for me. And you know, sometimes on a golf course you can have a very bad day, and you look up at the heavens and you say, what's going on here? What does this all mean? Why am I here? And I said to my caddy, we called him the Birdman. He was a delightful young man. He is a delightful young man. I said, Birdman, what does this all mean? Why are we here? He said, Mr. Snyder, we are creation evolving into eternity. Now, just think about that for one. That's very lovely, isn't it? Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought to myself, young man, you got a handle on it. You got it right on the mark. That's exactly what it is. We are creation evolving into eternity, and I've never forgotten it.
A caddy like that could ruin your game.
Well, I didn't have a very good golf game. Hey, as I say, whatever I'm doing, Gene, we are on the correct side of the grass.
But isn't it delightful that a caddy, a taxi driver...
Yep. I had a cab driver in New York one time that in 5 minutes he gave me more than I've gotten sometimes from an encyclopedia. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Young man, the time is gone for this trip, but I thank you for coming over. It's always a pleasure to be in your company and watch your mind at work, sir, and I'm in your debt for this.
I thank you so much.
Okay, Mr. Gene Roddenberry. The producer of the radio show is Debbie Alpert. The associate producer is Barbara Fagan. The chief engineer is Bob DePriest, and the production associate is Darian Strain. I thank them, along with the ladies and gentlemen at ABC in New York, and at all of our radio stations across North America for helping to keep this effort on the air tonight. I'm T.S., and you're on the radio show for Wednesday night, the 18th of January, 1989, from the ABC Broadcasting Center in Los Angeles, California. As always, thanks for listening, everybody.